What's going on, everybody? I'm back with another video. This video is going to be looking at the Premier League match between Manchester United and Tottenham. Now, before we get into the match, this video is brought to you by OneFootball. It's a great app. It's the app I use to keep up to date with my favorite teams, favorite leagues, and the biggest news around football. There's a link in the description below. It's a free download, and it's a great app, the best app out there for all things football, whether you want to follow the Premier League or any other league around the world. It comes out with the latest news. You can set push notifications to get updates when you're not able to watch the games, and it's a great resource. I highly recommend. Shows you lineups, and as you see, that's just me scrolling through the app as well to the right of our screen, and it's a great resource. I highly recommend it, and it would be a huge help to show your support and download the app. Now, also be sure to check out both my books. They're online on Amazon, and there's links in the description below, and check out Keyframe. All that's in the description. Now let's get right into the video. So starting with Manchester United in possession of the ball, they played with a 4-3-3 with Matic playing as a single pivot, but he had the tendency to drop outside of the central defenders into the half space, creating a three-man build-up and sparking a wide rotation that saw Fred as a single pivot and Pogba staggering in the right half space playing as a number 10. Then on the wide area where we would see the movement in response to Matic dropping, we would see the inverting of our winger and the advancing of our fullback. So we'd still maintain a presence between the lines, although higher up the field, occupying a defensive player rather than the space between the lines. This would be the movement that would occur because of Matic dropping. So from here, Manchester United would play with three more advanced players just ahead of the space between the lines, and this would go in comparison to the Tottenham 5-4-1 in deeper areas. So when Tottenham would press, it would look like more of a 5-2-3, but for most of the match, they played in a mid to low block that saw them play in a 5-4-1, controlling the space between the lines with compactness and forcing Manchester United to play into wider areas. Now, when Matic stayed as the single pivot, they would just line up in a 4-3-3 with staggering of their two fullbacks, occupying wider and more narrow positions depending on the moment in the match. We'd have Paul Pogba, Matic, and Fred as our three central midfielders, with Pogba and Fred playing more advanced between the lines, but Fred having the versatility to come deeper as a holding midfielder, while Pogba's main role was more as a number 10. And then he would then use partnerships from the wingers inverting to then create space because of pinning of the defenders of Tottenham Hotspur and find himself in space between the lines in Tottenham's very organized defensive block. And it's very important that when players invert and pin, and especially when there's five defenders, that they do so against the wide central defenders, because for Tottenham, these are the players that would jump between the lines to try and neutralize the impact players have between the lines. But for Manchester United offensive structure, their goals came from Cristiano Ronaldo, just from his moments of brilliance rather than great team play and team tactics from Manchester United. So if you want to see how the goals happened and you rewatch some of the clips from Ronaldo, watch his movement inside the box or before he gets the ball in the final third. Not so much in build-up, just in the final third, his movement in the box and how he creates just small amounts of space for himself to then get these opportunities to score so many goals. Now, Tottenham in possession went with their back three, but there were some interesting dynamics with their back three and their two holding midfielders. Oftentimes, we would see one of the two holding midfielders for Tottenham Hotspur to drop between central defenders, allow the left central defender to then move into the wider area and create dual width on one side and single width on the other to then force Manchester United to deal with asymmetry during their defensive shifting actions. Now, Manchester United would deal with this in a 4-4-2 with Paul Pogba and Cristiano Ronaldo as the front two strikers. Then we would be followed by a midfield four that we saw a lot of staggering from, and a lot of this staircase midfield that we see here, with a clear holding midfielder dropping deeper to protect the space between the lines, while the other three would be on different vertical and horizontal lines. This would then give them better access to wing backs or central defenders should they go and press. Also gave them a little bit more use of man orientation through to try and neutralize the effect that players like Son had between the lines and Harry Kane dropping deeper. So now as we see here, Højbjerg dropping as a third central defender, going deeper than his double pivot partner, and now Tottenham build with a midfield three and a midfield triangle. This puts Kulusevski and Son between the lines in the half space as more as attacking midfielders. Bentancur becomes our holding midfielder, and dual width is then created on this left hand side, with the right central defender driving forward to try and attract a midfielder out of position for Manchester United. Then we see the interesting dynamic with Matic using his man orientation, as we just mentioned, against Son to then form a makeshift back five. So with three central defenders and the advancing of Son, this allowed him to maintain Manchester United's numerical superiority against runners in behind like Heung-min Son. Then Manchester United would then go with the midfield four with Paul Pogba, typically dropping a little deeper in this instance, but only situationally. For most of the match it was a 4-4-2 for Manchester United, so just note that. But Paul Pogba would be responsible for the space between the lines when Matic did go deeper and get disconnected from the midfield of Manchester United, and then Ronaldo would be their single striker. And the big difference between Manchester United and Tottenham's defensive phase was the space Manchester United conceded in more dangerous areas, where Tottenham prioritized compactness and had a very structured approach in their mid to low block. So now a very common shape for Tottenham Hotspur is their midfield four with two holding midfielders and two more advanced midfielders playing between the lines, offering them shorter diagonal passing connections from their double pivot into their more attacking midfielders. Also, with the man orientation of Manchester United, it was possible for Harry Kane to drop between the holding midfielders of Manchester United and become free by dropping into the midfield and initiating a third man concept, or allow runners to run off of him into the space in behind that he would create when he would drop in the blind spot of the two holding midfielders. This would then vacate the two central defenders of the back four and create problems for the Manchester United defense, especially in the mid block where there is a little bit more space in behind. And that's where we're going to wrap up the analysis. I hope you guys enjoyed it, and I'll see you in the next one.